Hey everybody, welcome back to another video update here on All Things MSP. Today we have Produce8, who is a sponsor of All Things MSP, and we really do appreciate that. And one of the things we do for our sponsors is we offer them these updates so that on a monthly basis they can come and tell you what's new that they're doing. Now in this case, we've got a lot of great stuff coming out of Produce8 recently as well as in the near future, so a lot of stuff to watch. And one of the things that I want to point out here is that this is based on the need that a lot of clients have been approaching MSPs about in terms of productivity monitoring, not monetization. I wanted to say that like it's monetization. You're going to monetize it. What you're going to do is you're going to help them monitor and become more productive, and in the process, you're going to monetize it. So before I get myself tongue-tied again, let me go ahead and bring up Ryan McGinnis from Produce8. Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
Hey, Eric. Great to be on.
Glad to have you here. Hopefully, I didn't stumble that intro too bad, but, you know, we have fun with these. That's what they're here for. But they're also here to inform the All Things MSP crew about what Produce8 is doing, and you guys have some exciting stuff that you've just come out with.
Yeah, we have. For sure. Super excited to actually go through and talk about that a little bit today.
Yeah, and we're going to be seeing a little bit of a demo as well as talking just really quickly about why this is kind of happening and the three different layers. So, Ryan, let's go ahead and jump into those three different layers of productivity that Produce8 helps with. Yeah,
that's great. So when we started out as a business, we were obviously looking at the subject of employee productivity, particularly obviously for knowledge workers, and seeing this big impact of declining productivity over the last 4 years, coinciding with increasing employee burnout and hours worked, and our whole business is really trying to understand what's creating this problem, helping companies understand the factors that contribute to great or poor work days. And a completely different approach to obviously looking at it, and that our business is really about empowering individuals, managers and CEOs with data, and helping use that data to inform dialogue, to identify, where are we broken as an organization, and then start resolving some of these problems. And so if you look out in the world at the products that are out there, and some of your listeners may already kind of know our story and know a little bit of our background, there's always been these kind of like tools out there to help individuals, and they're really interesting solutions, whether to, focus and block, distracting applications, or to understand how they're spending their time. And then there's been this other layer, which became, really prominent during the pandemic, where there was this, panic about how do we manage remote workers, remote teams. And we saw a lot of MSPs being, asked about, employee monitoring tools and productivity analytics suites to help them understand what was going on with the remote workers. And so when our business was formed, we looked at this and said, hey, we think that there's an entirely different conversation that's missing here. And that's, trying to understand the impact of the way that we're working, and particularly the distracting nature of technology, collaboration, meetings, all these things on the employee experience, and on their ability to actually have time to get work done. And we think that is the big problem in the world. And so, when we started out, we actually, initially started with this concept of shared data, being able to have a team, transparently look across. So if you imagine a service desk, and be able to bring data from all of the interactions we were having with our technology into one place, so teams could actually study, what are we doing as a group? Where are we broken? And visualizing that, right? And using that data to kind of facilitate those conversations. Are we using our documentation system the way that we think? What does that look like? What does our workflow look like as we go through the day? Then we went from there and said, okay, well, the big thing, if we're trying to, reinforce habit change, we really need to empower the individual with their own data. And so we introduced this concept of, personalization in the kind of like the private workspace, so people could, go and study how are they using their technology, what do their days look like, and where are they spending their time. And that's great, because we kind of formed this concept of like the digital coach for the workday, and then started introducing features like daily reports that help you understand what does today look like or what did yesterday look like in terms of how am I spending my time, and built a lot of features, if you can see my screen, that started kind of informing, the employee of like, this is, kind of how you're allocating your time between engaging with applications or time in meetings and time in calls and these kinds of things. And what does that mean for your, for your focus, and how much of, your day is it's spent with this kind of intense use of, use of the tools and screen time, if you think about it that perspective, and then empowering them to kind of start setting goals for the things that are distracting us, engaging with email too frequently or engaging with Microsoft Teams or Slack too often. And so we built all this stuff up for the individual, but there's this big thing that was missing was really the organizational impact of all of these things. And so if you parse out the productivity problem, there are things that are kind of impairing individuals, the way that they work, their work habits, their ability to focus, context switching, all of those things. Then there's the stuff that happens at the team level that the individual doesn't have complete control over. How does the team manage meetings? How does the team, communicate with each other? Do we give, time for asynchronous work? So that our, employees can actually focus and get work done. But the piece that was missing was the organizational level. Like, how does this roll up and impact the entire organization? And so what we've built into Produce8 now, kind of going beyond these kind of personalized reports or the team kind of shared understanding of what work looks like, is we now have the ability to actually show what's actually happening with the entire business. And so we now can report on and roll up data about how much time as a company are we spending in internal versus external meetings? How much time are we spending in virtual calls and Zoom and Slack and Teams? And what is that, what's the notional cost of that? And so we've introduced this kind of personalized dashboard for, leaders in the organization to kind of see, quickly what's going on with my organization, today or for a period of time, like weekly or monthly, just as a very quick view. We also now report on employee level sentiment, right? So, and this is the concept of like, did you have the kind of work day you wanted to or not? And so we're using that for the employee to kind of reinforce at the start of the day and end of the day, how are you feeling? You're ready for the day. And then at the end of the day, how did it go? And then we take that data and anonymize it and roll it up across the entire organization and start tracking how are our employees reporting, self-reporting, are they having the kind of work days that they want to or not? And it gives us a way to keep tabs on the sentiment of the organization. And this dashboard, this new kind of quick view into the organization gives us a sense of that. And also gives us a sense of like, overwork concerns. Like, are we starting to see working hours starting to creep up? And so we can keep tabs on that. So we've introduced this new dashboard for managers, for executives, or if you even wanted to open up to the whole company, you can. There's the ability to actually make every user in your company have access to aggregated company data if you want to do that. And so what does this look like from a detail perspective is that we can actually kind of drill down on each of these subjects now, like looking specifically at meetings, looking at the financial impact of meetings on our organization. If we kind of translate time in internal meetings and having a notional cost to it, we can now start to, show you some of these things in terms of like how much time are we actually spending in meetings, what is the cost of it? And then looking at a breakdown of what do those meetings actually look like in terms of their breakdown. Are they large, involving lots of people and that notional cost, or are they kind of smaller team meetings, or are they one-on-ones? And again, external versus internal. So with our sales team, obviously we want those guys on the phone talking to clients, or, customer support teams, those guys are on the phone talking to clients all the time. That makes sense to have lots of, external meetings. But maybe you don't want to see those same folks, spending tons and tons of times internally on lots of internal meetings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I love about this is you're actually balancing the productivity along with the well-being of the employees as well. So it's not just how much can we squeeze out of the employees, right?
Yeah.
It's how much can we make it the right amount of work in the right amount of time to get predictable results.
Yeah, I mean, the way that this thing works, and the way, like, if you look at our company philosophy, was really built around that. is that we're really trying to find the overlap in interest between what's good for the employee and what's good for the business. And, to date, this has always been kind of a zero-sum conversation, right? One party's losing at the cost of the other, right? Or winning at the cost of the other. And that's kind of the way we look at this is like, how do we find the intersection of interest where, what's good for the employee is good for the business overall? And that's why, this concept of like trying to get feedback from employees about, are you having the kind of day that you want to have or not, gives us a sense of, well, yeah, we're doing great from a business level, but our employees are suffering. Right. And that's not great. Or the converse is true. Everybody's reporting that they're having great days, but our performance, as a business is suffering. Yeah. Right. So we really want to be able to see both of those things. And
that first scenario that you were talking about is not sustainable, right?
No.
You may be producing what the business needs, but if the people are suffering, you're not going to be performing well for long.
No, and I think that's, people ask us all the time, like, do I need to start measuring different KPIs and metrics? And I think, yeah, we are definitely introducing new KPIs and metrics, but the reality is like most businesses already have them, right? So, in an MSP, you're using, Bright Gauge. In a large enterprise, you may be using business analytics or business intelligence tools to tell you how the business is doing. They're kind of lagging. They tell you what happened a month ago or 2 months ago. And we think people should still keep their eyes laser focused on those core KPIs and OKRs that they track to tell us how we're doing as a business. But what we're kind of infusing now is kind of like trying to help people understand why. Right. And so if we start to see these, dips in business performance, that we can kind of go back and say, look, are we spending a massive amount of time collaborating and communicating? Are we distracting the heck out of each other? But trying to find those things before they impact the bottom line, right? To keep tabs on them. So we're adding new visibility into the, like you said, the employee experience and what that might mean for outcomes. And if it's you start to see working hours creeping up, it will look good for this month, but it's not going to look good for next month.
Right.
So we do the same thing for meetings. We can do the same thing with virtual calls because they're not exactly the same thing. So book meetings, so things I have on my calendar for offline meetings in large groups, don't show up in our use of Zoom and Slack and Teams, right? Conversely, ad hoc engagement with Zoom, Slack, and Teams doesn't really show up on my booked, kind of intended workday, if you think about it. And so now we kind of bring together, a view into both of these worlds. And again, understanding, kind of the impact of that and how are certain teams engaging with those tools, right? So, my kind of sales and marketing team, are they spending a lot of time on Zoom versus, my engineering team, for example, and seeing what those trends look like over time. And then, getting back to this concept of employee sentiment, you saw, the short form of that. We can actually get this breakdown of, looking over, the last week or the last month. How are employee reported sentiment? Like, what does it actually look like from great days to terrible days? And again, comparing intention versus reality. Did you have the kind of day that you wanted to have? And so these are the results of our end of day check-ins with our employees. We can actually see, how we're doing on that front and how we're trending over, this month or, the month prior, right? And what that actually looked like. And
so it looks like you can go back and look at really bad days and figure out, maybe something specific happened on that day. And
so
drill down into it.
I don't want to give away everything, but kind of where we're going next with this is actually correlating what was happening, how are we interacting with all of our tools and our calendars and all the things that were actually happening, and correlating self-reported employee great work day with what did you do that day, and being able to take long time series of data and then generate kind of some insights from that to say, on your great days, this is the kind of behavior you had. On your, bad days, this is what it looked like, because now we can start to actually, provide some advice and recommendations about the things that are actually impairing the, you having the kind of day that you wanted to have. And so that's where we're going with it. And we started with, just being able to report upon and visualize and let everybody see kind of like, how are we doing in a safe way that doesn't, identify the individual, but just gives us this aggregated, anonymized data from across the business that helps us understand some of these things. And it's the same thing with working hours. If you actually look at, all of the calendar items, all of the interactions and little time slices that we're having with each of, our technology, it eventually kind of paints a picture of that was your workday, right? And we can start tracking, even if we're missing data points, it doesn't matter. We have a way of taking, good enough sets of data to be able to paint a picture of what does the actual working days look like for the team. And then we start identifying, you can see for our organization for the month of April, we're building this release, and it had an impact on our engineering team that they started working, many of them well in excess of 9-hour days to try to get this release out. And that's something, obviously, the business we want to be, paying attention to, and figuring out how do we avoid that in the future. And then this is where we came from initially. We had this concept of like all of these things, all of the interactions with our tools, we now report on at the business level, how are we consuming our technology? And so we can actually see, where are we spending a time as a business, and what does that actually say about costs? And, I was on with Steve Taylor on his podcast and talking about this, and I hadn't seen it yet. We're deploying it into production, and we saw this kind of notional cost. That in April we spent $21,000 as a business with our 25 or so employees viewing Slack, and that's like a profound number, And so the tools that we want to be spending time in, Visual Studio for our engineering team or HubSpot for our sales and marketing team, versus, these other tools, which may be helpful for us, but also kind of trying to keep an eye on, oh my God, that's a lot of time for us to be spending on it. And as a business, that gives you the opportunity to say, okay, hey, we might have a Slack problem at an organization level. What do we need to do to help create a better environment for people to not be engaging on Slack? And how does that translate at team level, agreements on how do we use Slack? And then for the individual, trying to give them ways, which we already had, of, setting goals and kind of reinforcing, hey, maybe you could be batch checking, Slack at the end of the hour instead of like FOMO checking it, 250 times a day, which is what we actually see.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, I really do appreciate you coming on and giving this update. And by the way, this is the first time we've actually gotten to see the product on the channel, which is great. Now that people have actually seen what it can do and the amount of data that it can provide. When do we think we're going to see this as a multi-tenant offering that MSPs are going to be able to offer to their clients?
Yeah, great question. So we've been engaging with MSPs for, since the beginning around, the requests they were getting with their clients. We obviously started by selling to MSPs first for their own organizations to help them optimize how they were working. But they kept coming back and saying, look, I've got clients that we're having to respond to requests for things like this. The only thing we can find is monitoring, and we don't love it. And so, they kept asking us about it. So we started with a referral program, and then now we've built out and in the process of building out this full kind of multi-tenant partner program. And the intention there is they build up towards this big new story, which is the MSP's role in advising their customers on the impact of the employee's digital experience on productivity. Right. And so now, in June, we're going to be announcing this partner program. And it's going to, give us the opportunity to engage either with these, kind of tactical things that come off as these one-off client requests, or start building up towards the next big thing in managed services, which is, advisory on a topic that if you're honest about it, MSPs have been indirectly advising on the productivity suite and the technologies for a very long time now. But now, like, thinking more strategically about the impact of technology and the way that we work on the employee's ability to be productive. And I think this is, it's an exciting new topic. I think it's a huge growth area for MSPs. It's a logical extension of the kinds of requests that they're already getting and have been getting through the pandemic.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to see that. And what I'm really hoping is that we can have you back at some point to do a longer office hours session to actually walk through the multi-tenancy and how you think an MSP is actually going to start to sell this and put it as a product offering.
Yeah, we'd love to do that for sure. It's a super exciting story, and it's going to be a big thing for us. Where we've for a long time been talking about it, and been getting pushed by MSPs to go this direction, and we're super excited to finally get there.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Have a great day.
Thank you.